Good evening and welcome to the LaRouche Organization Weekly Battle Report. Today is August 6th, Wednesday. I'm Michelle Aaron, your host, and we have quite a report for you. Today is the 80th anniversary of the dropping of an atomic bomb on Hiroshima, Japan. Friday will be the anniversary of the second bomb dropped on Nagasaki. Both bombs created devastation and brought the world no closer to peace. And yet, the lessons of that tragedy appear not to have been learned. Other crises also continue all around the world. What do you do in a period of such confusion and disorientation, where there's no clear and obvious pathway to end wars, to stop genocide in Gaza, to convince the powers that be to do the right thing? You create initiatives, interventions into the unfolding process that have the potential to force the whole thing to transform. Tonight, we're going to look at 3 of the initiatives currently being taken by the LaRouche movement and to which you, the viewer, are strongly urged to participate in. These 3 interventions are, first, the distribution of a new intelligence dossier by the LaRouche organization titled Worse Than Treason: The Actual Motive Behind Russiagate, showing the larger implications of the Tulsi Gabbard revelations about a 2016 conspiracy against the incoming Trump administration, which dossier you will see we deployed today at rallies in New York City and Houston, Texas. Second, a new petition initiated by Schiller Institute President Helga Zepp-LaRouche proposing that there be, very soon, a meeting between the leaders of the United States, Russia, and China, which meeting could help avert a global thermonuclear war. And thirdly, some organizing. We will see 3 awesome on-the-ground reports of LaRouche movement members Kevin Pearl, congressional candidate from the Bronx Jose Vega, and Joe Jennings, in real dialogue with the population, putting forward solution concepts. We begin. To introduce the new dossier, Worse Than Treason: The Actual Motive Behind Russiagate, we're going to hear from TLO President Diane Sayre, showing that the issue of British-sponsored Russiagate is not old business. It is not in the past. They're still doing it. This week, the same former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who convinced in 2022 Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky to scrap peace negotiations with Russia, he's in Taiwan, playing the same tricks now to egg on a world war.
The fat former British Prime Minister with the caveman hairdo, Boris Johnson, has been in Taiwan lately, trying to not only provoke a war between China and Taiwan, otherwise within China itself, but also praising the shift that he has seen from the Trump administration with regard to Russia. He said that the scales have fallen off the eyes of the Trump White House, implying that perhaps the Trump administration is a bunch of iguanas, I'm not sure, and that now they recognize that being chummy with Putin doesn't get you anywhere, best to threat a nuclear war. And Boris Johnson was chortling that China and India are now really going to pay, perhaps by August 8th, from the secondary sanctions that Trump has threatened to impose if they insist on buying hydrocarbons, as Bojo calls them, from Russia. Now, this is idiotic. China has 1.4 billion people. India has 1.4 billion people. Russia has a lot of hydrocarbons. So They don't need to buy it from the United States. They're not going to hurt. We are. The danger is, why is Bojo insisting we can win a war with Russia? That's what I'm worried about.
We're now going to go to Betty Jennings at a morning rush hour rally in front of the Leland Federal Building, where the federal offices of representatives and various government agencies are in Houston, Texas. Our team was out there, visible to lots of people driving by today. We had big banners, gave briefings over a bullhorn, and passersby got literature and engaged in discussions. Betty will demonstrate how to use this new dossier.
Greetings from Houston, Texas. This is Betty with the LaRouche organization. We have here that we're handing out to the people, our congressman, worse than treason. This is the British role in bringing American intelligence, right, the leadership to destroy any course that the incoming President Trump could have on changing U.S. policy towards Russia. There's a deliberate policy to bring us into a war confrontation through nuclear war, with the idea that we would back down Russia and bankrupt them with economic sanctions. But instead of going to nuclear war, we can do something different. We can get the United States to join with the BRICS countries and engage in high-speed rail and other necessary infrastructure that needs to be built. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty, and those were some beautiful signs you guys had out there. Now let's dive into the dossier. We'll read through a few brief sections from the introduction. What Americans need to know is that the British plan to pit the United States against Russia was launched by British Prime Minister Winston Churchill even before World War II had ended. And the dossier will elaborate on this history. Okay, continuing. The reason for the British orchestrated confrontation between the United States and Russia was so that the British could consolidate a global financial empire based on depopulation and looting raw materials and labor. China's Belt and Road Initiative and the BRICS New Development Bank, launched in 2013 and 2014 respectively, posed a great threat to what King Charles has called Global Britain. The British set out to disrupt these developments at all costs. The fear of the British and their American counterparts was that President Donald Trump's desire to have good relations with both Russia and China would disrupt their drive for financial dictatorship. This is why U.S.-Russian relations had to be sabotaged. The Russiagate narrative served that purpose nicely. What has not yet been mentioned by Gabbard, other than limited reference to the Steele dossier, is the role of British intelligence in manufacturing the Russiagate story, and the role played by key individuals such as GCHQ Director Robert Hannigan, MI6 Director Richard Dearlove, former Prime Minister Tony Blair, and others. So you can find this dossier at the LaRouche organization website. There's a direct link, thelarouche.org/Russiagate. We also include a link in the video description. Print and circulate this dossier on social media. Take it to your congressperson's office, your local newspaper, university campuses, and any other institution that you can think of. President Trump has to recognize that King Charles's Global Britain is his and humanity's biggest adversary. They're the adversary, not Russia. Let's now see another rally report, this time from New York City with Art Murphy, out on Fifth Avenue near the headquarters of Fox News. Tons of people coming by from all over the world, from all over the United States, seeing our signs, engaging with our organizers, and where today they distributed this dossier. Art is also going to introduce another theme of this week's organizing, which will be elaborated on by Ron Bettag in Houston and Jen Pearl in Massachusetts. The occasion of, and the lessons of, the anniversary of the 1945 atomic bombings.
All right, hello, this is Art Murphy with the LaRouche organization. We're out here campaigning in front of the Fox News headquarters, and we're getting out this special white paper that the LaRouche organization has produced, exposing the real story behind the Russiagate hoax, how the British and their friends wanted to get us into these wars. In fact, Winston Churchill, this fat drunk, was the guy that made sure we got to drop the bomb on Hiroshima. In fact, he was actually trying to get us to bomb Russia before the end of World War II. So the idea is that we have a danger of World War now. The question we're asking is, did the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki end the war or begin it? And the idea is to break this war machine now, get the American population to wake up to the real purpose of the United States against the British Empire and against empires everywhere, and stop the war and the genocide that's being carried out now in the name of our taxpayers. Let's end the wars, let's rebuild the nation, let's work with the BRICS nations and rebuild the economy, despite whatever the so-called news media is telling you. Okay?
And now back to Houston, Texas, the rally this morning with an important elaboration on this idea from Ron Bettag.
We're here in Houston this morning, as many places across the world, remembering the tragic situation 80 years ago with the bombing of Hiroshima and shortly followed by Nagasaki. The bombing of Hiroshima would not have happened under Roosevelt. Roosevelt had a policy coming out of the war, as he stated any number of times, of ending colonialism, working with Russia and China, actually developing the world with the infrastructure and the capabilities of the United States have demonstrated. It was Truman who ran the operation directed by Churchill that did the bombing on Nagasaki to draw the line on that Russia, an emerging world, and keep it in the colonial kind of discussion. The killing of Kennedy was a similar kind of United States changing event. Now we have, with a new investigation on Russiagate, we have a situation where we can actually make that investigation target the British who actually ran it, and use that as the basis of opening all this up. Bring the United States in, working with the BRICS, and build the infrastructure building out of this, where we got to break colonialism, and the United States should take its role in doing that. So thank you.
Now to Jen Pearl, who was today at the 80th anniversary commemoration of the atomic bombings, commemoration in Boston.
Hi, this is Jen Pearl. I'm in Boston, and I am here at the 80th anniversary commemoration of the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This is really important that we wake Americans up to what's going on, because we want to make sure the same situation is not repeated. So we're out here leafleting a statement today. Did the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki end the war or begin it? And there's a lot of peace groups out, and we're trying to get the word out to Americans today. This is part of a national mobilization across the country. So I hope you'll join us.
The leaflet referenced by Art and Jen, titled, "Did the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki end the war or begin it?" can be found on the LaRouche organization website, and we also include a link in this video's description. Another initiative by the LaRouche movement is a new petition initiated by Schiller Institute President Helga Zepp-LaRouche, titled "Urgent Appeal to President Xi Jinping, President Donald Trump, and President Putin." This petition urges a meeting of these three leaders, which meeting could be the key to stopping world war. Key moments in the petition read, "There is a great historic opportunity in front of us where the leaders of three great nations could send a powerful signal to the world. If President Xi Jinping would invite President Trump to the military parade scheduled for September 3rd in Beijing's Tiananmen Square to mark the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II, and President Trump would accept the invitation, as President Putin is also expected to be present, the people of the world could find hope that those three leaders would open a new chapter in the history of humanity. We, the signers of this petition, appeal to you to pull mankind back from the abyss of annihilation and become the founders of a new era in human history." You, the viewer, everyone can sign this petition now through the Schiller Institute website, or we also include a link in today's video description. Help us to get more signatures on this petition. Individuals can sign, citizen leaders, heads of organizations, local and higher level representatives, religious leaders, the more the merrier. Now to my personal favorites of tonight's reports. Our organizers are out talking to people, organizing them with ideas that are outside the terms of debate given to us by the mainstream and the evildoers. We're going to start with Kevin Pearl, who went out on the streets organizing the U.S. population in West Roxbury, Massachusetts yesterday.
Hi, this is Kevin Pearl with the LaRouche organization in West Roxbury, Massachusetts. I'm out here with my wife Jennifer. We have been out here for a few hours fighting to end the policy of perpetual war and to engage people around a policy of peace through real economic development. The pamphlet, this one here, has proven invaluable in terms of communicating that idea to people. It's also very much in the tradition of what the real America is. But it's been very interesting because we've gotten responses both from people on the right and from people on the left around the idea that it's not about this war or that war, right? The people who are flooding weapons into Israel to commit genocide in Gaza, the people flooding weapons into Ukraine in order to wage proxy war against Russia, they don't give a damn about Israel or Ukraine or Russia or Palestine or any of that. They are out to defend their global financial empire, even at the risk of thermonuclear war. So it's been very interesting in getting people to rise above the narrative and actually think through where we must have the world heading, right? Where do we wish to be 50 or 100 years from now? Anyway, it's been a very interesting discussion with people out here. That's what I have from Boston. Thanks.
And we have a few photographs from that rally. There's Jen Pearl out there with this big sign, "China and Russia are not the enemy, global Britain is." And this break the blockade, end the genocide. This one with some solution ideas, water, not war, beautiful global map. And then a couple more, no war with Russia, stop here. Now to a report from congressional candidate in the Bronx, Jose Vega, that was posted on his X account over the weekend on the organizing that they've been doing out there.
We've started an initiative at the Vega for Congress. People keep asking me what's my domestic policy, and I think our domestic policy, 50 new American cities in 10 years. You think about it, and it's like quite an insane endeavor to build even one city in 1 year, right? So how do you build 50 new cities in 10 years? You think what goes into building a city, right? What goes into building a city is you need the people to do it, you need trained people, you need the steel, you need the glass, you need everything that takes up a building. You need to be outputting that. Now, how does the Bronx fit into that? The Bronx, specifically this area in Hunts Point, there was one factory called the Grand Iron Works Factory that used to produce 50,000 metric tons of steel. Now you go to Hunts Point, it's a drug den. There's just drug addicts there now. You know, there's not much industry left there anymore because all that we export now is death. How many bombs, how many bullets do we send to Israel or to Ukraine so that more innocent people die? And yet we don't produce anything here. What if we brought back steel production in the Bronx and people thought that the steel that they were making was not only going to be used to build these 50 new cities, but to rebuild Palestine and Gaza? The steel that I'm baking up in the morning every day to go and make steel that will be sent to Palestine so that they can rebuild from the ashes that is just there now. That's an optimistic thing. That's an exciting thing that we want to talk to people about while we're out here. Okay, we don't think small here. We, as a congressional campaign, have the power of the federal government to enact a real kind of change. And the Bronx will be the place where it starts, where we start bringing back real industry and manufacturing. And we're going to train our young men and women to actually produce this stuff so that they can get a real education, so that they can produce the steel, the glass, so that they can be the surveyors, the welders, the mechanics, the engineers that will go into actually building these cities and rebuilding Gaza and these other war-torn places. You know, there are 55 conflicts around the world that the United States has funded and is currently aiding and abetting. We are going to stop that, and we are now going to stop exporting weapons and bombs, and we're going to start exporting buildings, hospitals, and schools. That's our orientation, that's our domestic policy, and that's what we're going to be out here talking to people in the streets about.
That's wonderful. Our final report is from Houston, Texas, last Thursday, where Joe Jennings will report that the LaRouche movement went out with a beautiful banner to rally and welcome Dmitry Bakanov, the head of Roscosmos, which is the Russian space agency, who came to Johnson Space Center of NASA. And we went out there and did this in a public gesture of friendship. This was the first time that the heads of the two nations' space agencies met in many, many years.
Good morning, everyone. This is the Schiller Institute down here at the Johnson Space Center of NASA in Houston, Texas. We've been welcoming to Texas Dmitry Bakanov, who's the new head of Roscosmos in Russia, where we've come for discussion with some of the NASA personnel on fruitful cooperation around the space station, which sadly will be decommissioned pretty soon. But we're hoping that there will be new areas of cooperation, because this is imperative. Cooperation in science. This is what can bring nations together. Just 50 years ago was the link up between the Soyuz mission and the NASA in outer space. And the Schiller Institute insisted that that kind of cooperation must continue and expand to solve our problems here on planet Earth. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. And to Jen and Jose and Art and everyone, all the organizers who you don't get to see on this program. All right, so we are in a pretty challenging moment for humanity. And there's pretty much guaranteed to be some confusion and frustration about whether things are going to work out and what can I or anyone do about it. The key to clearing your head, clearing the air, and contributing to the solution is to begin to act upon it. These initiatives taken by the LaRouche movement this week are crucial and exemplar of that process of intervention. As we saw today, we have the new dossier, Worse Than Treason, the Actual Motive Behind Russiagate, showing the larger implications of the Tulsi Gabbard revelations of a 2016 conspiracy. We have the new Schiller Institute petition. that floats the proposal for a meeting between the heads of state of the US, Russia, and China to end war and create the basis for lasting peace. And we have the ongoing organizing by the LaRouche movement of the population. This gives a lot of possible areas for the viewer, for you, to jump in and organize this coming week. Please do so. We need your help. Go out and organize and send in your reports to info@laroucheorganization.com. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week.